Let's see. Wow. Who am I and what do I do? That goes back a long way. Since my teens, I was interested in being an herbalist. In fact, it was my calling, and I was driven to be it. Really couldn't do anything else. Um, and so by age 18, I was going to the university studying botany. I didn't know there were any programs that taught herbalism anywhere. And like naturopathy didn't exist in the Midwest where I was. I'd never heard of it. Otherwise, I could have gone to school. I'm no doubt that's what I would have done, but I didn't hear about naturopathy until I'd been practicing for about 5, 6 years as an herbalist in an herb store. And by that point, it was like, I'm these people, this could be a burden. I'm not sure I want to go to school to learn how to reach more people. I really always keep kind of a small clientele, and to teach so like that and to write, I'm so driven to write. So I've had to, that's my path, those things together. So I started practice at the herb store 1981, a long time ago, and Bob Gallagher, the owner of the store, and we were both kind of learning as we went along. But one thing he taught me, which was really beautiful, that first year, he said that the beautiful thing about herbalism is you can never know it all. There's always another leaf to turn over. So, and that is so true. You cannot know every single herb or every single application. So, and all herbalists know that. So that's been a wonderful little teeny lesson that I learned then. So I practiced on my own. After 8 years, I went out and practiced at a chiropractic clinic because there's more chiropractors than naturopaths here in Minnesota, Wisconsin. And then I practiced on my own for, I don't know, 25 years or something like that. Let's see. I practice herbal medicine, well, for one thing, using small doses, which is not unknown actually in the whole um, world of herbal history of herbal medicine, but also I look more for the essence or how to understand the whole paradigm, the wholeness of the herb, and then the whole process in the person. And in fact, that's what I think is missing in modern medicine and unfortunately naturopathy sometimes, is that looking for the chemistry, looking for pure reductionism down to the particle rather than the process. Like, it's not like the old days when they said, oh, you have liver problems, which we don't have as much because we don't have as much malaria, but we have a lot of gastric problems due to all the toxins in our food and chemicals and stuff. So we could say, oh, I have stomach problems, GI problems, and uh, and regular medicine, they have gastroenterologists too, but you need to train yourself to see the whole pattern, and that's a more intuitive process. And the herbs are built by nature or come out of nature themselves to deal with processes. They deal with too hot, too cold, too damp, too dark, too light, or for other plants. So they accommodate themselves to that. And by learning how to deal with too moist, for instance, then they become good kidney remedies. So most of our kidney remedies grow right on the edge of water and the land, like horsetail in that kind of wet sand near the river, in the ditch, nettles in the places where the runoff, if you've been on a farm, the manure, the outhouse, the failing septic system, where there's too much protein waste product in the soil. Nettles processes that. That's pretty easy to see. Well, what it can do for itself, it can do for us. So it really has to deal with excess protein processes in the body, including, it's such a great kidney reparative. And I mean, I hope that a lot of UK herbalists and naturopaths know that, I mean, it really does get people off dialysis from time to time. I had one case like that last January, and there's an essay online by Jonathan Treasure, who is a UK trained herbalist who gathered the science on that and some case history. So that's a case where that's what we should be doing, building on folk history to the scientific and not ignoring that. So, so now I just naturally thought this way. I had a little different upbringing in that when I was infant, we moved to a very isolated Indian reservation in southern Florida, and they didn't speak English as their first language. And although I never learned to speak Muskogee or English until after we left, it was too confusing. I could understand people. So I really got a different understanding, a different set of suppositions in English or Western culture at an early age. And that's why I think it's so easy for me just to reject Western science and go off in the old intuitive fashion. And here I have to thank, I got my master's degree from the Scottish School of Herbal Medicine in Glasgow in those days, and that helped me appreciate and understand science better, be able to read papers and work from folk medicine to papers. So, uh, so I'm a little bit redeemable. That is energetics, and that's kind of the modern, more modern 19th century take or terminology on energetics. And those, if you go to a neurology textbook, you'll find all those tissue states mentioned. That is excitation or irritation. That's over stimulation. We have depression, meaning understimulation, not mental depression. We have relaxation, and I mean, these are actual medical terms, like you could write down if you're analyzing someone and you know their physiological, neurological state. Constriction, I think, I say tension, atrophy, nervous atrophy, um, and they say torpor. Torpor doesn't always appear in the books, but that's really stagnation, or that's a little different than relaxation. So we have 6 tissue states. They correspond fairly well to the old Greek hot, cold, damp, dry. We got to realize they didn't have temperatures, they didn't have barometers. They were really not talking about hot and cold at all how we think of it. Hot was an action. Hot was being overheated on a hot day. That was hot in the first degree. Fever was hot in the second degree. Mental aberration, heat rising, as they'd say in Chinese medicine, heat in the third degree, and burned would be heat in the fourth degree. So they talked about processes, not measurements, the way modern medicine and science would go so much, because of course they couldn't measure things. So energetics were once accepted by everybody: Greek, Ayurvedic, Arabic, um, uh, then Chinese. Um, One does find it some in Native North American, at least, and Central American. I don't know about South American, and also in Africa. In fact, we found in the South American, Southern U.S. medicine, high blood and low blood, they say, and those we found in Africa as well, and the Afro-Caribbean as well. High blood is overheated on a hot day, um, and children, and from what I picked up from a Haitian and an African, children were trained to recognize that, immediately throw water on someone's head or whatever to try and cool them off, just because that's first aid in a very hot climate. So all these different cultures, we find this to be fairly universal. I would say too, there's, first we have spiritism, as they say in anthropology. Spirits are causing the diseases. Then we have, then the next step is humoralism, which is this energetic system. And then we have modern medicine. So it's kind of part of a process. Yeah. Okay, I did want to do some introductory ideas like this, and but the main thing I will be talking about remedies for tissue states, and then I say the great heritage gift of the um, great female remedies, reproductive remedies known from the American Indian people. So as the settlers colonists were moving inland, well, at first they lived right next to the Indian people in the village, and the Indians still live there on the East Coast, oceanic villages there. Later they removed them, but they lived in intimate conversation. And so who would know all about the native plants? It would be the native people. And they couldn't get all the, they couldn't get a lot of European herbs very well, or they didn't, they tried to grow them. But they quickly learned that the Native Americans really knew their stuff, really knew how to, they really were famous. I would say, to my mind, they were the greatest herbalists in the world. I'm a little bit biased, but I'm not American Indian, but I grew up on that reservation, so I have that bias. They just know that so well, and so they taught that highly respected. You would find even, I'd have to say, even racists, you'll find them respecting American Indian medicine in the 18th, 19th centuries. And and then we have these great female remedies. About half of the, or a third of the great additions to American Western herbal materia medica, I'm talking about before the last 30 years when we have stuff from all across the world, but old time in the early 90s, 80s when I learned, about a third of those herbs were Native American, and about a third of those were female oriented, were reproductive. And we might say, well, how did that happen? It's clear to me now that these passed from Native American midwives mostly to white and black midwives, and then on to the general population, into the books, so to speak. So they're tremendous heritage gifts. They're really first of all, the Native American people visualized that it was possible to treat a lot of reproductive problems that Europeans, that are not treated in Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, or European, or we would say Greek Arabic medicine. We find each one of these traditions, there tend to be 3-5 good female remedies, like Romania root from Chinese medicine, the great blood builder, just about impossible to do without. Shatavari for aging, women aging. Actually, it's also good for men too. And pulsatilla from homeopathy from Europe, ladies' mantle from European folk medicine, which is a good pelvic tonic and mucosal tonic and muscular tonic. Okay, but say use of raspberry leaf as a tonic during pregnancy, for safety of the mother and the baby and health and good nutrition, that was not known anywhere. No other culture used that. Very standard. Doctors nowadays, they say, oh, don't take raspberry while you're pregnant. So they think it's a menagogue or something. This is what's called superstition in medicine. They have no idea. They don't realize that it's in fact a tonic. And if it was an abortifacient, there would be no international corporation that put raspberry leaf in their in their everyday herb teas. They don't have aristolochia in there for a reason. So, because that is an abortifacient. So, okay, so or something, so other things. Okay, so they had this great knowledge of, they visualized what could be done, and so there's great remedies for certainly for reproduction. I think a lot of these remedies did enter in through the midwifery, through pregnancy and delivery, but they also have applications just the monthly cycle, etc. So we have great remedies like black cohosh or Simisafuga or Actea. It keeps bouncing back. Which name should I be? The botanists are screwing with it, teasing it, and but it's a great cramp remedy. It's a great amenorrhea remedy, and it is a good remedy for menopause, but it's gotten a little bit overamped for menopause. We have to look back to what it was originally used for. And then it's a great PMS remedy for a dark state of mind. So, and then occasionally it does loosen the fluids, and it's good for spinal injury too. So it's 90% female, 10% anybody who gets a spinal injury. And this also is another thing that the Indian people visualized, that there were remedies that really just basically for women not for everybody. Uh, and very often, blue co-wash too would be 10% spasms, 90% for women for cramping. And then we'd have true and false unicorn, which are kind of environmentally problematical now. We'd have trillium, which is a great endometriosis remedy. Now, it was used for bleeding, it was used for tubercular bleeding, but its genius is endometriosis, for which it's at least one type of endometriosis. It's almost impossible to fail with it. That's a plant that really only should be used in small doses. It is somewhat endangered. Yeah. That's another thing. A problem with this tradition is that the Indian people used roots more than we say herb in European. The Northern Europeans use the herb. The Southern Europeans use the essential oils, the leaves. I mean, who would want to dig up a root in Italy when they're stumbling over, they're lost in a patch of lavender and rosemary, and it's like, yeah, I'm going to stop and dig the roots up. No way. Um, so, so they like the essential oils all through. That would be Greek Arabic medicines, very strong on those culinary herbs / medicinal herbs. And then Northern European, it's like, what's green? What comes out when we feel happy during summer? And then, so we have our different folk cultures, and that influences herbalism a great deal. Native America seemed to think that, like the Chinese, that the roots were where the power was, or Africa too. And so many roots. It may be a storage issue too, easier to store when you're moving, when you're a nomadic people. So there's a general introduction. There's about a dozen great female remedies from North America. I will talk about other things like Romani root and so on, just because there's some great herbs. So. Oh, yarrow. I mean, it's just impossible to not love yarrow, which, see, now there's a remedy that's, although it's ruled by Venus in Western astrological meaning, it is maybe a woman's remedy because it's for heavy bleeding. It's really for gushing of blood. There's salad burnet and yarrow. That's about it. But it's for cuts, wounds. It just starts very simply with just nasty cuts where you're really bleeding a lot. Then it goes to fevers, colds, flus. It has a very strong control over the neurovascular system. So boom, it can stop the bleeding to one area and spread the blood out through the capillary blood elsewhere. See, that's like something forgotten. Like, why did they, in the Civil War, American Civil War, they'd give the guys that come back wounded, they give them whiskey. Okay, well, it's an anodyne. It's taking them out of the current problem, but actually it's a stimulant. And you'd say you don't want to stimulate the blood when you're bleeding, but no, you want to open up the capillary bed elsewhere from that one wound. The capillary bed can expand 20 times more than is necessary to feed the body in any particular area. So it spreads. That's to manage heat. That's an incredible amount of heat management going on there. And so yarrow takes advantage of that, probably other properties too. It's an astringent to stop the bleeding. And then also, because of that heat management and blood management, it's good for fevers, colds, fevers, flus, etc. And then from there on, we go to more complex internal uses. It's a GI irritation and lack of tone. So it's like diverticulum. It's ulceration of the stomach. But I've used it like for using the first two uses. I've used it, 50 times for every time that I've used it for the guts, and maybe a few. But I've used it very often as a good female remedy. It's also for fibroids too. It's one of the better fibroid remedies. Yeah. So, so you get overbuilding of the endometrium because you get too much blood supply. It's for normalizing too much blood to an area, not enough. So it can be for amenorrhea or extreme bleeding. And then for the endometrium, it can be for engorgement of the endometrium. and that causes excessive bleeding and overgrowth. Maybe it's really for fibroid uh, in the on the outside, well, the inside of the uterus, not a myoma in the muscle. That's not what it's for. So each herb has its process that it's specific for. And yarrow goes too much to the surface to be for myomas and things like that. And there is a remedy for that. But you guys are going to have to wait for the lecture to know what that herb is. And that one I've used maybe only a half dozen times, but I mean, it has cured myomas, which is pretty nice, you know, because that's in infertility there.